Hello, we are back for another episode of the Transfer Flow. Today, myself and Neel look at how to evaluate these early season games, what to look for, trends, etc. We also take a look at Arsenal. We want to kind of understand, are they legit with these new additions, or are Man United's new signings really going to be the key for them to take a surge up the table? Manchester City also added a bunch of new players, but are they going to be stable enough at the back? Lastly, we also take a look at Liverpool. Ekitike, Wirtz, they have a lot of attacking options now, but can they defend teams going the other way? All that and more in this episode of the Transfer Flow. Hello and welcome to an episode of the Transfer Flow. I'm Hayden Van Brewer, taking a little bit of the lead from Patrick Van Straten, who's away on holiday this week, and today I'm joined by Neel Shalat. Neel, how are you doing today?
Absolutely great, Hayden. Delighted to join you finally. As I was saying, the producers have kind of contrived a schedule which keeps us apart, but finally today we get a day to have an episode together. So really, really excited.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good one today too. Football season is sort of coming back in full flow. Seasons in different countries start at different times, but here on the Transfer Flow, the Premier League is sort of one of the main areas of focus for us, and that all kicked off this weekend. But before we get into some of those matches, I think I wanted to break down for fans, people who are watching a lot of football now, because I think that's the thing to do these days. With the season starting off, you want to see the new teams, the new players, how these things all fit together. But sometimes once you get into the season, we have trends, we have these big picture things that we're talking about. But right now, we really want to talk to people about how to find some of these things, how to get started now that there's so much football back to watch. You've maybe taken a break. I know some people watch the Club World Cup, some people maybe not as much, but right now it's sort of fresh, it's new. So let's have a bit of a conversation about that, Neel. So as we're getting into this, where's your sort of starting point when you're coming into the new season, new teams, lineups, etc.? Where do you like to start?
Yeah, I mean, I should say like this. I don't know if it's just me, but like this season, I think because of the Club World Cup, it almost feels like just a continuation from there. So it doesn't feel like that much of a new season this time. Whereas like before you haven't seen these teams for like 2-3 months, and you're like, okay, something really new. But with many of these teams now, we've seen them a lot. But yeah, like generally in a new season, I think the first kind of thing I try to watch out for is like teams with new coaches. Obviously they have their pre-seasons, and I mean many people follow those. I personally don't, because I just can't be bothered with friendlies since I'm watching random games instead of friendlies. So like for me, I kind of first like to watch teams with like new coaches, see what they're doing, see kind of what basic ideas, because they've had the preseason, so you generally expect that the team is reflecting the basic stuff at least that the coach wants to see. So like I watched the first two like Tottenham games, and you find a lot of interesting stuff there. Obviously, we know a fair bit about Thomas Frank already, but how he's gonna adapt to Tottenham, how he uses the squad, what sort of players he seems to favor. Those kinds of things are like one of the first things I want to watch out for in a new season. And then obviously with the other teams, you just want to see what's the sort of continuity like from the last season. If they've had many kind of player transfers, you'll probably see like a new kind of system develop, or if they're just trying to change stuff up, or if they've tried to keep it together, what sort of tweaks are they making, what's looking different. If it's like a new player, how are they fitting in? So yeah, it's different stuff for different kinds of teams, but always a very exciting time, I think.
Yeah, I think personally, it's for me. I like to watch soccer with lots of different people. So I watch with people who work in the game professionally, and I'll work with people who it's just sort of the thing they do on the weekends or a hobby. And I think one of the pieces of advice for people to sort of maybe get a bit closer to what the professional scouting or the video scouting side is talking about looking at maybe like an individual player, right? So uh, obviously, for some of these teams, they have the same coach. They might have made a few transfers and things like that. If the team is pretty continuous, then that's a great point to go, well, let's look at this one guy and see what does he do? How does he interact with the one or two players that are nearest to him? What kinds of things can we sort of start to understand in terms of like their movement? What are they doing to get open? When are they running forward versus when are they running back? Where are they defending on the field? Some of those kinds of things. I think those are really good places to sort of begin. And I think, uh, yeah, I think we want to kind of keep that in mind here, because as we're sort of one game in, this is not the podcast that's going to be jumping and telling you, this one goal changes everything that we thought from preseason. You're going to continue to hear a lot of the messages that were put out in those season previews that Kim, Ted, yourself, and the rest of the crew kind of put a lot of work into. That's still going to be relevant here. That's sort of the foundation of what we're talking about. Things aren't too different, but we do want to keep an eye, especially on these new fits, these new coaches, and start to get an idea, gather as much information as we can to try to understand where these trends are going to be going and how those things work together. So I think a starting point for me, this was this sort of keynote fixture of the weekend when we looked at the fixtures, this Man United Arsenal game at Old Trafford. I think that kind of makes it a little bit spicier when the team that finished lower in the table host the game. Neel, where do you want to start with the sort of marquee matchup of the weekend?
I mean, I think we should talk about this maybe from an Arsenal point of view because I found that more interesting. It was I like put out a post when I think half an hour in, but it was a super uncharacteristic performance from aside from the set piece goal, of course. Which I mean, first set like I think it was the first set piece of the season, and they scored, which is yeah, absolutely right. But that aside, it was just such an uncharacteristic performance. Like they kind of set up in a higher block, but they weren't really pressing intensely, but they also left so much space. It's very weird from that perspective. They let the game be like so open and transitional, but they didn't really like it was just United attacking them more than them doing anything because they were a bit sloppy going forward, some misplaced passes, some kind of failed take-ons and stuff like that. And so like for the first, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes, it was extremely uncharacteristic of Arsenal, what we expect from Arteta. And then they kind of dropped back, kind of tried to shut up shop. Did a pretty good job of it. Like I think until the end. At the end, it was a bit frantic again, but like for that beat, it was like quite weird. And I mean, obviously, you could say that maybe this is by design. They want to change some stuff. They want to play in these more open games, and that's why they signed like Gyokeres, for example, to take advantage of these kinds of games. But obviously, he was like super quiet. I mean, again, it's just one game. It's his first game. He needs time to kind of get up to full match sharpness. Obviously, get used to new surroundings, new league, all of that. But it was what he had. I think four completed passes of nine attempted, one dribble attempted which failed, and he won. And I think this was the most damning stat. He won just 3 of his 13 duels. And you'd want to see more from him. You want to see more movement as well. I thought he was just very quiet generally. So it was weird one for me. But again, there's a long way to go. So maybe in future games it does come off more where they kind of take advantage of these open games. But in this one, the first half an hour was very like un-Arsenal like from what we've seen from Arteta. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think for me, I told people before the game, this is a game that I thought would be sort of won or lost in United's defensive third, especially with United's build-up. So coming into the season, looking at last year, United had the fourth most possession losses in their build-up phase. Basically, this was a real issue for the team. I think a lot of has been made of they built around the back. They get pressed. They don't really have an outlet. They go long. They either win it or lose it, and that's sort of how these games go. And this is an Arsenal team that was effective last season in terms of pressing in a high block. They would press high or they would drop in low. They didn't really do this sort of mid block thing. Patrick and I spoke about Newcastle having sort of a similar tactic. That's this Arsenal team. And what we saw was United was able to break out again. Arsenal didn't really go full gung ho in the press. I don't know if that's a little bit of unfamiliarity with Gyokeres sort of leading that at the time. Obviously, they weren't pressing in the same way when Kai Havertz came on later in the game. So, again, there's a lot of these game state matchup situations that are still left that we're going to need to see from Arsenal as they play more and more opponents. But I think from the United side of it, they were able to get past that build-up stage. There were certainly the things that we expected to see from Mbeumo and Cunha. We saw Cunha turning in sort of central channels of the field or in these half space channels and just running vertically with the ball, being very difficult to get pressure on, especially once he gets in and around the edge of the box. He's such a scary player that you don't want to concede a foul. And Mbeumo having the variety of his game wide as well as stretching in behind. I think the variety of his movement, the way he's really intelligent there, you can see the things that those players did last season, you were able to see those, I think, right off the bat. And there's still a lot of questions on Man United, probably a lot more so in the midfield. But I thought Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes did sort of enough in this first game to show there was some improvement from the build up there. So a very tight game. Arsenal, away from home, shut up shop, get the clean sheet, get the win, get their set piece goal to get themselves started again. And yeah, we'll continue to look to grow into the season. I think the last thing I wanted to kind of point out and keep an eye on is sort of Zubamendi coming in the midfield. I think
Yeah.
this sort of wasn't the like crown jewel Zubamendi game.
No.
But my gut feeling looking at him, even though we maybe didn't see it in this game, is that he looks like a real technical operator. Like I think he could add a little bit of a different dimension to this Arsenal attack with his sort of short combination passing and things. He made a number of sort of late runs forward from the midfield, just at different times in their build-up when maybe Saka or Odegaard had the ball on the right in particular. And I kind of want to keep an eye on that. I'm not sure if he offers the same defensive presence as Partey did, breaking up transitions in the midfield, but he might add a different layer to their attack going forward. So that sort of balance, if they do continue to use sort of, I mean, again, they sort of came in with the sort of 4 center back lineup with a lot of size and power, and that meant that the midfielders had to do more of that, maybe running forward as opposed to Lewis Skelly pivoting into the midfield.
Yeah.
Obviously, he did that when he came on later in the game, but that's something I want to keep an eye on with Zubamendi. If that is sort of a slight tweak, if Gyokeres is a real sort of number 9 and Zubamendi is a slightly more advanced, slightly more comfortable attacking midfielder, if that's sort of the tweak that Arsenal's looking to make moving forward. I think we want to push to the first game, actually. So we're kind of going in a little bit out of order here in terms of how the games rolled out, but I think there's sort of a flow here to some of the storylines. So kind of this game maybe felt very, very tight and very close. A game that was a bit more open was the Liverpool-Bournemouth game. Neel, how was that for you watching the first game of the season? I know for myself, that was like, I was getting calls from people like, it's back, it's
We're
time.
back.
How
Yeah.
was that game for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was quite an introduction, wasn't it? I mean, yeah, that was like almost the opposite of that United Arsenal game. And yeah, it was so interesting to see because, like, Arsenal, I guess, when we spoke about at the start, the kinds of teams we're looking at, Arsenal are the kind of team where you're expecting a lot of continuity, just these small tweaks, like you said, with Zubimendi or Gyokeres. Whereas Liverpool, of course, have the same coach, but just because of the number of signings they've made, we did expect a system change. Of course, we saw the Community Shield as well, where we kind of got the first taste besides the friendlies. But yeah, it was very interesting because they, I mean, like we have been speaking about this through the summer, haven't we? Where like we are a bit like, I don't know, concerned, but was definitely wondering about this Liverpool side and how they plan to control games basically. Because you look at all their signings, you look at their squad, super top heavy. Like they can blow through any defense for sure. But at the back, we do have like questions, and I think this game did highlight some of them. So for one, like the fullbacks, right? So obviously, I think Frimpong recorded the fastest speed on the weekend. We now have those kind of some small physical data publicly available. So I think he clocked above 36 kilometers per hour. So he was great, going up and down. I thought he also did well, like tracking back defensively. But we know he's not a great like defender in general, like at the back post or even one-on-one against a really tricky dribbler. So on that side, there's a question on the left with, I mean, I don't know what you think about the Kerkez signing, Hayden, but for me, because he like at Bournemouth, basically the thing he did was similar to Frimpong, just getting up and down, up and down, up and down a lot. Now this game at least, and even the Community Shield to an extent, he for a good part did play a similar to that Robertson kind of role where he stays back, helps in the build up, and then just goes forward, in the opposition half in the final third, just to kind of support a bit. But Hakpo's the one holding the width. He's kind of receiving the ball outward and cutting inside, and then Kerkesh will only go and support. So he's not actually like absolutely patrolling the flank. And like if again, this is just one game, we may get more information to maybe justify the signing more as the season goes. But if this is like a continuation of that Robertson kind of role from last season, I would have thought, a better signing would be kind of that hybrid centre back kind of guy, someone like a Joshko Guardiol, or if I think on the transfer market, someone like a Yorel Hato maybe. What do you think, like, of Kerkez? Because I've seen people as well were questioning his kind of role a bit. So yeah, that could be an interesting story to follow.
Yeah, I think that's one of the differences that we're seeing right now in the kind of top four group, that Manchester City are sort of playing with that sort of build up shape of three, with one of the fullbacks either pivoting in. If it's Liverpool, it might be Frimpong going high, and Kirkic is a little bit more of that in between. He's not sitting in as a third center back again, like some of these players, which is sort of the direction I thought Liverpool would go. I thought they'd give themselves the flexibility to play sort of a true back three if they wanted to, or to do it just sort of as a build up shape where then when they defend, I kind of thought Liverpool would have to continue to defend with a back four as long as they have Mo Salah, or they're trying to keep him high up the field, because either he has to press in a front two, or they have to press with him in a front three where he's able to stay high and central. So I kind of thought, okay, yes, maybe they continue to play a back four, but they bring in this sort of different profile to Frimpong on the other side. So I think there's going to be a little bit of teething pains there. I think Kerkez, I would really want to watch how much he's sort of passing the ball versus how much he's actually running. And I think that's part of like maybe what's underappreciated about Andy Robertson is that it wasn't just Trent Alexander-Arnold who was playing these cross-field passes from fullback to fullback, or to putting in a lot of crosses, varying balls down the line and into the sort of center forward area. Robertson actually showcased a lot of that during, especially during the peak of his powers. But I think that's something that maybe he doesn't get credit for because of his athleticism. So for Kerkez, I think there's still going to be a little bit of figuring out how that balance works in the team. The sort of headline bit, I think, for me is just this was the Ekitike show. This was showing off every single thing that Kim
Oh
has
yeah.
been saying in the newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, definitely do that, because this is the kind of thing that I've been talked about for a pretty long time with Kim, about the versatility of Ekitike, the way he can bring other players in. Obviously got to show off some of his goal scoring already. Not necessarily the cleanest first goal, but I think the fans at Anfield were just blown away by the mix of his size, his control, and his sort of endeavors to run as well. So this was the Ekitike show. How do you think he brings a different dimension to this Liverpool attack?
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic because, again, I had high hopes, of him coming in. But to be honest, like, between this and the Community Shield, like, he's even exceeded my expectations so far with just how lively he's been. Like, whenever he gets around the ball, he's making things happen. He's so dynamic. And it's all kind of coming together well as well. Like, he's already got his kind of goals and assists, but even just generally when he like drops back to kind of pick up the ball, or to link up, you see Salah making the runs, you see Hakpo coming in to link up with him. So like as the attack as a whole is also linking together really well. And I mean, Ekitike is, yeah, we know the quality he has, just how great he is on the ball, his touch, his ball striking as well from range. And we're getting some glimpses of that, but yeah, he really does. He takes the attack to like another level, right? With just the kind of the things he can do, both like individually, but just getting the ball, turning, dribbling forward, and getting shots off, but also the way he can create space, his movements, his link up play. He's really got that kind of all round threat, right? Whereas with someone like Darwin Nunez, for example, from last season, who obviously didn't always start, but he was more one dimensional in the sense that he's gonna occupy the last line, obviously create space behind him, stuff like that. But Ekitike, I think, gives you a lot more variety and a lot more dynamism. And so I mean, between him, obviously we know the quality of Salah. Hakpo looks great. Wirtz as well. I know like he didn't have the best of games, but I think the role he's got where he's drifting around in deeper areas to pick up the ball and play forward, I think he can deal a lot of damage. Frimpong bombing up the flank. Like this Liverpool attack is, yeah, it's gonna be quite something.
Well, I think that's where I really want to go next, is that midfield combination with Wirtz and Mac Allister. It feels like this is, I mean, one of the most technical midfields in the world. Like this is really exciting kind of piece of it. Yeah, I think it didn't all come together, but the combination of Wirtz, Mac Allister, Szoboszlai being able to play in and around into Ekitike and not need to go wide. I think so much of the Liverpool teams under Klopp, it was that they could go wide and overwhelm teams in the wide areas with their sort of directness, with the passing range that Trent had to switch the ball to the opposite corner of the field or play all the way up the line. That was a real threat. And now this Liverpool team, they can hurt you centrally, they can hurt you out wide. I'm fascinated to watch how this evolves. The one question I have is what can they do to protect Virgil van Dijk, to protect Konate going the other way? Because this is a team, it sounds like they're going to get a deal done for Mark Gahey. I think that's a great little stopgap, especially as they're continuing to negotiate with Konate. I think they're trying to figure out if they can get him in at a price that they like. It seems like he may go to Real Madrid to get the same sort of financial package that Trent Alexander-Arnold got. But Gahey, in terms of a right footer that could play on the left if he needs to, has done that at Crystal Palace, gives them sort of cover for Van Dijk if they don't find a left-footed one that they love, or the ability to play with him on the right if he is to sort of succeed Konate moving forward. So I think that one makes sense. But really, the question is what's happening in front of them. I think there's a lot of Liverpool fans asking, like, do we need Gravenberch as that sort of athletic stopper to run down transitions and break up play? That's one of the things that Gravenberch did a really good job of for Liverpool last year, in addition to his ability to sort of turn players in the midfield and carry the ball out of the back to break an opponent's press. He also was kind of that main guy destroying and breaking up play when opponents were able to gain a bit of speed. So what is your take on that? Because it's if you make that change, you're leaving out Szoboszlai or Mac Allister, one of these players. That's a really top player that has to sit out if that's what you do.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough decision, but I do think it seems for most games you will need someone like a Gravenberch. I mean, I should say, like, he, at least for me, exceeded my expectations last season with just how well he did in kind of protecting the back line. And so if we get that kind of level of Gravenberch again, yeah, I think he is important because, like I said, with the fullbacks, you're not getting the most defensively solid fullbacks. And even like I'm interested to see how the season goes with Van Dijk as well, because he's obviously approaching the twilight of his career where we start to see a drop off. And with the way the current system is set up, you basically need him at his peak, right, to be able to deal with all that's going to come on the counter. And if he's not quite there, then you will start to see some goals go in. So obviously, as you say, with Gehi coming in, you're adding a bit of sort of solidity at the back. But like with if you don't have basically two absolutely elite level centre backs, you are leaving yourself a bit exposed if you're playing this midfield trio. So I do think probably they will need Gravenberch for many of the games, because we know now in the Premier League, like, every team has at least some weapons to hurt you on the counter. And again, this Liverpool attack has more than enough quality to blow up any defense pretty much. But you're gonna have some tough days, right? You're gonna maybe not finish so well. You might face like a super low block. You don't want those kind of days to hurt you with goals conceded on the counter, because that makes it much worse. That makes it much tougher. So I do think you need to solidify it a bit, and I think, yeah, Gravenberch is an important piece, and then you can rotate with the other guys, because obviously there's so many games coming up this season.
Yeah, one to keep an eye on, that Liverpool back line. It feels like if they can get that looking really sharp, then yeah, they're probably the title favorites here. But we'll have to see. There's still some big questions. They haven't gotten that extra center back in as of time of recording. We'll see where they go from there. I think they're not the only one in this sort of potential
Wait,
title race.
I wanted to pose you a quick question about Liverpool, though.
Sure.
I mean, it's only two games, yeah, but one of my first reactions to this kind of setup between the Community Shield and this game is that Arne Slot is kind of doing better Bosch ball in the Premier League. Do you think that's like a fact? Because with the fullbacks bombing up, he's basically attacking with like front sixes, front sevens sometimes in situations. What do you? Because I mean, obviously, like, Better Bosz doesn't have the best of reputations, but what he's done with PSV in the Eredivisie, I think, is a commendable job. Where he's just said, you know what, like, we have obviously a massive kind of talent advantage over most of the league in our attack. Let's just go and blow these people up. And I think Liverpool do have enough in attack to kind of try something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that will continue to be an emphasis, the ability of Liverpool to open up games. I think this Liverpool team and just Slot's tendencies as a whole is not the same pressing as Peter Bosz. I think that's sort of the criticism of Peter Bosz, right?
Yeah,
Is
okay,
that
that's a bit much.
with
Yeah.
the team presses like so all out, and then when the game is not like that, how can they adjust
Yeah,
and
yeah.
be able to do that? And I think Liverpool have the sensibility in the press with the leaders they have in the front line. I think, especially if we're going to see a lot more of Cody Gakpo this year, that he's a really intelligent presser. He's sort of the staple guy for the Dutch national team now. And Salah knows his role in that sort of front press. So I think there's a little bit of reserve tendency there. I always harken back as an Ajax fan when Peter Bosz took the team and moved Daley Sinkgraven, who was sort of an attacking midfielder in the league, to be a fullback. And the team was just rolling out David Neres and Houston Clouvert and all these guys that they were just attacking nonstop. So I think it's a little bit different, but I do think I think Ted and Patrick have talked about it a number of times, that being able to play different types of games and succeed is the staple of a good team. And Liverpool, not just being a control team that sit and play in one way, that they can open up the game and go, if you guys want to have a shootout, let's have a shootout. And
Yeah.
we'll see how much
And
space
we'll
you want
probably
to leave
win.
for
Yeah.
Ekitike and Wirtz. Yeah, exactly, because we've just spent 300 million. If you think your players can outscore our players, then so be it. Let's see what can happen there. So I like that they have that other option. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, not just in the Premier League, but also when they go into the Champions League group stage games, when they're playing obviously different opponents home and away. They play some of these big teams in an individual game where I think we'll expect Liverpool to, as they did last year, finish as one of the top teams in that group stage. But they'll have games against top teams where, okay, they don't necessarily need to win, so they can try to win that game in different ways. And that could be really interesting to see which time they use that tactic or not. So it'll be good to keep an eye on this Liverpool team, especially these sort of midfield and backline choices that they have to make, how they decide to press. But I know that one of the previews that I enjoyed the most was your City preview. So I think they're a team people have a lot of eyes on coming into the year. And maybe some of the players that didn't get a ton of buzz or talk kind of coming into this season are guys that are maybe, from a City's perspective, seen differently in the locker room. And I'm speaking a little bit about John Stones and Rico Lewis, who were both players that started here. City, I think most people would have expected them to win maybe even comfortably against Wolves in this game. Obviously, City had a number of new players, as we're talking about guys coming in. But what did you see from this game? And having done a lot of research into the team, how did that compare to your expectations coming into this one?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you felt the same way, but I do think the scoreline was a little bit flattering because I wouldn't say it was all entirely smooth sailing for City. So especially in that opening period, I think it was. I mean, obviously they had more of the possession as we expect. They had more territory, all of that. But Wolves were getting some decent counters at the start, and they even had obviously that disallowed goal before Haaland got the opener. So when you look at 4-0, you think, oh yeah, they just cruised through the game. I don't think that was the case. So for one, at that start, like they even conceded some kind of counters through their midfield in that phase. So I think that's still, at least I do want to see more before I say, okay, yeah, they've solved all their problems or whatever. But after that, what really stood out to me was in the second half how they dealt with having the lead, because I mean, for as far as I can remember, City under Pep Guardiola will just try and keep as much of the ball as possible, pass, and just kill you with passing. But in the second half, they didn't come out with that approach. In fact, before, like between halftime and their third goal, they had only 35% possession. They let Wolves have the ball. They even dropped back. They weren't like pressing super high either. They dropped back, and that's kind of the stuff that Arsenal were so good at last season, right? Just taking the lead, dropping back, having a super compact block, and seeing it out, and potentially hitting you on the counter. And that's basically what City did. They kept it quiet. And then obviously the third goal was interesting as well, right? Because it's a long ball from Trafford, taken down by Reijnders, I think, and then some nice sort of link up play, and Haaland gets the finish from that Reijnders assist. So I think this does show that, I mean, again, we've been kind of theorizing this since Marmoush came in, basically since January, and Pep Guardiola has said stuff to this effect as well. Like, we definitely expect City to lean into transitions and open games more this season than before, right? Like, if you just think about the Premier League meta, it doesn't look like you can play their typical kind of style and expect to succeed when teams are going to open up in moments and otherwise be very compact. So you can't just try and break down low blocks all the time. You have to kind of drag them out and then try to hit them. So that was quite interesting to see. And yeah, I think that's the main story that stood out to me, is how they deal with these positive game state situations. But again, this was, I think, a weaker team. One of the big questions I had was about their press. I don't think this game gives us a lot of answers because Wolves don't really do much like deep build up. But interesting note is that they didn't keep Holland and Sherky on the field at the same time. So I think that certainly seems to be one thing they do have in mind. But again, we'll get more answers as the season goes on. But what did you make of it? What did you see in this
Yeah,
game?
I think first off is seeing all the new pieces in attack for City. I think Reijnders, I think there were especially Patrick and maybe Kim as well raised some questions around like the price tag for Reijnders and how he would maybe slot in. He's maybe not the deep one in the City midfield. He's sort of, I think we think, filling this unique Gundogan attacking eight box crashing sort of role. But he looked really good in this game. He looked like one of the players that sort of was most sharp and most able to figure out how to break down Wolves. So yeah, I think exciting one there. I think Marmoush and Cherki both came on and looked like they had a lot to offer. I think Erling Haaland, even just seeing his reactions to Kevin De Bruyne, to Jack Grealish leaving, he's looking for guys that can link up with him and really form both that sort of like on-field connection, but also like a bit of a personal relationship. I think he's a guy that is still a bit of a young player, not one of the sort of veterans in that sort of way. And I think he likes having those people that he feels like he's really having fun with because he plays a lot of the game without the ball. So those sort of peak moments are really, really important. And so for City, even though they maybe started with fewer of those new attacking toys on the field, we're still looking to see how that comes together. But the early signs, I think, are pretty good there. The questions for City has always been how would the midfield fit together and how would the back line hold up when they sort of get exposed. Again, we maybe saw a few chances where we're a little bit nervous about the back line early on in the game, but I think the bigger one is in the midfield, and especially around Nico Gonzalez. Obviously, we expect Rodri to come back into the team. The comms are that he's very close to sort of match fitness to get back to playing 45, 60 minutes initially and then build his fitness from there. But I think Nico Gonzalez, it's a question because he lacks that sort of maybe speed and quickness to do some of the decisive defensive actions that the City team may need. Maybe didn't need against Wolves, but may need moving forward. And then does he have enough sort of added passing value? Like I thought I'm pretty happy seeing John Stones back. I know the players had some injury challenges and things, but this is a player that has great passing ability. And when he's on his game, you kind of remember like, oh yeah, this guy was really good in the midfield for City at one point. Could he be an important player again for them? And also Rico Lewis is a player that sort of, I don't know, playing for a manager like Pep Guardiola, who made so much out of Philippe Lahm. It feels like Rico Lewis is another guy that John Stones and Rico Lewis, while not the big transfers from the summer, they could be the guys that are most important in City figuring out this defense, midfield sort of area of the pitch moving forward, which I think is going to be really essential for them.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think Stones, especially because I do think, I mean, I've been wondering this since last season, and obviously he wasn't fit much, so there wasn't an option. But one of this, because clearly, like, you can't replace Rodri, right? That's absolutely super clear. It's been clear since, I mean, since 2 years almost now. You have to kind of try and just find a balance without him, where Like you maybe have one guy offering the defensive solidity, one guy offering some of the passing value, and so to kind of find that solution, I did wonder whether that Stones pushing into midfield from centre back role and forming like a double pivot that way was something they might try again. Obviously, they didn't do it in this game, but I'd be interested to see if they do try it going forward. Because as you say, like I'm still not sold on this midfield holding up against like really like for example, obviously Wolves are kind of set up to play that way, but we know they've lost some pieces, especially like Cunha. Without him, it's a really different kind of side and a really different way that they attack. But if, for example, you faced Bournemouth, right? You have like someone like Semenyo running through the middle. That's when I want to see, how is this midfield going to hold up? Because yeah, like you said, with Nico Gonzalez, I'm not sold. In fact, like even in January when I'd done a piece on City's business, then I was like, I'm not sure about this guy because I don't think he gives you the key thing you need is defensive solidity. I don't think he gives you that. So without him, I think someone like Stones, his presence plus keeping three defenders behind him, that's probably one of the solutions. So yeah, that's going to be I mean, it's always interesting to follow what like Pep Guardiola does in trying to find these kind of solutions. And yeah, like generally in attack, at least they're spectacular when they come off. But this base kind of structure, I do want to try and figure out. And again, we'll see. As I think they've Spurs next, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, I don't want to be too disrespectful to Wolves here. Wolves have had a number of players leaving, Cunha really being that sort of key piece for them out the door. I think they're going to adjust and figure out their attack with Strand Larson being made permanent. They play Bournemouth next week. I think we'll learn a lot more about Wolves in that match. One last kind of piece I wanted to sort of throw in before we move on to another game is I thought Ait-Nouri looked so comfortable for City. I thought if we talk about Kerkez maybe still finding himself a little bit in between in his role and trying to understand the team around him, I thought Ait-Nouri slotted right in. He sort of knew when to get forward as a true sort of fullback. He knew when to just sit in and be part of a real back three, which is not something he really did tons of for Wolves. He was usually much more of that wing back. Obviously, when he came through with Wolves a bit younger as well, he sort of showed some of that energy. But I thought he looked really comfortable. I think his passing range is going to be a value add for City. I think it reminds me a little bit of when they used to have Zinchenko in that area, a player that like was nominally an attacking midfielder playing as a fullback, a little bit lightweight defensively. I think Ait-Nouri doesn't have those worries defensively. He looks robust defensively. He looks tactically versatile. It looks like a really good signing. So as again, we're talking about the pros and cons. There's still some question marks there, but the early signs for him, I think, looks like a really good fit. So kind of talking about the same back three midfielders. How do they slot in? Where is a fullback a wingback? Is a fullback coming into midfield inverting? I was really surprised. This was for me the tactically most surprising thing because Chelsea, we know, went all the way through the Club World Cup. They were champions. They had Cole Palmer as sort of maybe the star of the show at the end of that. But I think one of the underrated players in that sort of run was Reece James, who did a lot of times coming into what almost looked like a Trent Alexander-Arnold role, coming in more centrally, really showing off a passing range, both long and through the lines. We know he has great delivery into the box. Physically, I mean, he's such a powerful 1v1 defender. I think he's a guy that just, people run and bounce off him, that he moves them out of the way. He's able to just not just win a duel or a challenge, but win the ball back and then keep it with his team. So I was really looking forward to seeing is he going to continue to play in this role? Obviously, we said Liverpool didn't get Jarell Hato. Chelsea did. So maybe that will be the balance on the other side. We'll see. We've seen Cucurella play a lot of different roles. It's part of the reason he's such a key player for Chelsea and for Spain. But actually what we saw was Reece James just slotting into the back three with Cucurella coming into the midfield. So for me, that was the first thing that I was like, well, this is the exact opposite of what they did just a few weeks earlier. What do you make of that, Neel?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting kind of game in general, right? Like in the base, as you say, with I think with James as well, it's also a case of just protecting his kind of fitness because we know he's not had the best kind of injury record, And so, like Kukure, I think he has the versatility, like in his game, and like the kind of tactical understanding to be able to play various roles. Like, if he definitely can get forward, right? But I think you want to protect him. You want to make sure he's kind of not exerting himself too much. So I think that's probably part of the rationale why you want to keep him inside there. Besides, of course, the stuff you mentioned about his other qualities. But it was an interesting game. Like, further up the field for Chelsea, right? Because, like, I mean, we've talked, obviously everyone's talked a lot about their transfer business because they're doing a lot of it. But like, when you think about this game and why they like did win, because obviously Palace put out like a great block, as we expect, super solid, super kind of disciplined, everyone doing their job, full credit to them. But from Chelsea's point of view, I'm like, I do wonder about the wingers, especially, and especially having sold Madueke, uh, a guy who definitely has the potential to be a difference maker in these kinds of games. Like, I do wonder about the options they have now. I would say Estevao looked really bright when he came on, and I'm really excited for him because he was sensational in the Brazilian league. And let me tell you, the Brazilian league is not easy. Like, it is a high quality league. For like a teenager to be doing the stuff he did there, I think he definitely can have an impact in the Premier League this season. But the starters, right? I just going through the stats again. It's just one game, but Pedro Neto, he had one shot and two key passes. One of them was a corner, which was basically the majority of his 0.39 xg plus xa. And then Jamie Gittins, two shots, two key passes, 0.14 xg plus xa. Neither of them really looked like they were gonna pose a serious problem. I think that made life really easy for Palace, where they could just block out the center, be like, okay, send the ball out wide, we're gonna be able to deal with them. So that's kind of the, and of course the striker as well, right? Without someone like Jackson to stretch the defense, it also made it easier for them to be like, we're holding a line here, and we're gonna stay here. So yeah, I'm wondering about this Chelsea attack, and I'm interested to see how this comes together because there are some questions for me right now.
Yeah, I think what we did see is that Cole Palmer didn't really miss a beat. There was no residual fatigue from the Club World Cup. It felt like he kind of picked up where he left off. He changes his position well. He'll go wide to create an overload. He'll cross. He'll combine centrally. He can come deep. He can stay high. The variety in his game is still there. He's still going to be the key playmaker for Chelsea this year. No question about that. I think there was definitely in Bino Gittins, you saw right off the bat what they were looking for from his role. A guy that's very vertical, can
Yeah.
take a defender down to the end line with his speed. I thought, yeah, some positive bits for him. I thought Pedro Neto was a lot quieter than he was this summer. I thought Pedro Neto looked like he had maybe taken a bit of a step forward with some of his timing, with some of his combining with Cole Palmer. Didn't see a ton of that from him in this game. And I thought for Joao Pedro up top, obviously Chelsea have brought in new striker options. We saw Liam Delap with a bit of a later cameo in the match. I think he wasn't able to find some of the spaces that they would have wanted. And this is not a rollover opponent. Again, this is a Crystal Palace team that I think is really strong, really well coached, and posed some of the more interesting questions, I think, going the other way. I think sometimes you can get the wrong idea of the player that we're saying here, saying, well, Eberechi Eze, this isn't a move that Arsenal should do. Well, it's not a move that they should do at 65 million pounds and pay for a 27-year-old. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be one of the most impactful playmakers outside of the sort of top 3 or 4 teams, because his ball control, his ability to sort of feel when he's under a large amount of pressure and move it quickly versus when he decides to take players on. He's got a great understanding of the game there. Obviously, the disallowed goal, I think it's one of those weird ones as fans also starting the season, because maybe in previous years we're like, that would have never been ruled out. This year it is. It probably is a foul. I think the way he sort of throws Caicedo out of the way of where the
I think
shot
it was
actually directly
also.
goes.
I think the referee said it was also he moved within 1 meter of the wall, so it was.
Yeah,
I
at
don't know.
least
I
on the
mean,
screen that I saw, it said checking for possible foul
yeah,
as
but,
opposed
but
for
I mean,
encroachment. I think that was
it's
maybe
always a question one.
speculation, but yeah.
Yeah, but uh, well, at least you can say we did see Eze's ball striking in that moment because boy did he hit that
Yes.
shot! Like
Yes.
that was
I
quite
think I
something.
think Eze, Sar, Mateta, if they can keep that front three together, they have a very good one. And Adam Wharton was
Oh
really
yeah,
the real ones for me was like the midfields for these teams because I the more I watch him, the more I fall in love with Caicedo for Chelsea. Like for me, he is the he has taken over that air, that mantle from N'Golo Kante a little bit. He's so strong. He's a lot better on the ball than people give him credit for. I think he continues to improve in that all the time. His passing, his comfortability in those spaces, a few turnovers, but something that I think he continues to look stronger in. But Adam Wharton, some of his passing and what he offers, like, I don't know how long Crystal Palace will be able to hold on to a guy like that because doing what he offers, I was really impressed with him.
yeah, he's so good, and the as you say, like I think he's Palace are doing an excellent job of like replacing key losses, and again we don't know what's going to happen by the end of the window, but they could lose some more key players. I think he's like the most important player in just this kind of approach and system that they have, because the way he connects everything together in midfield and the speed with which he does it, right? Like he's receiving on the half turn and he's immediately playing that forward ball. I think we saw it for that Sar goal in the Community Shield, where he's not even completed his turn. He's played the pass. He's just so good in those kind of tight central spaces, moving the ball quickly, getting the team forward quickly. Besides, obviously being an excellent passer from deeper as well. So I think that kind of, I mean, you're gonna have a really tough time finding another player like that for within Palace's budget. So I think he's super important, and at least it looks like he's gonna stay for the season. So I think with him there, we can expect Palace to continue doing pretty well in Europe as well, and of course in the league.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Palace probably still want to get a few players in if they can. It feels like they've played the cards maybe close to the chest a little bit, but I think for me, they also are a team that wants the window to end. They want to hold on to the
Yeah, oh
players they
yeah.
have and get on with the season because I think in Glasner they have a coach that is really strong and they have a group that is performing really well right now. So we'll see how they sort of go continuing into the season. I think maybe the last game that we'll touch on today might be another one that maybe would have been a marquee matchup if we didn't have that Man United Arsenal game, uh, which is Newcastle versus Villa, and these are teams that finished sort of right neck and neck right towards the final day of the season last year. We asked a lot of questions about this Newcastle team. They're sort of in the midst of transfer drama with their main man being left out of the team for yeah non footballing reasons, I guess we should say a little bit. But yeah, Newcastle versus Aston Villa. Um, what did you think about this game? Where do you want to start with this one?
I mean, yeah, I think at one point came in our kind of group chat said there's no footballers on the pitch on this one. It definitely was. I mean, I think that it was not the most entertaining of games, but I think it was a good start. Right, it was a very open start. I thought Newcastle's press really worked at the start. Villa didn't really show any idea. I mean, they were kind of trying to bait the press, but then they didn't have good like outlets, and both in execution, but also in just the players. Like they didn't have any real runners between like McGinn and Rodgers on the wing. So I think that's something they have to work on. But then, yeah, it was not the most. I mean, Villa had like zero shots at halftime. And then Newcastle, once Villa dropped back, had like very few ideas. Like in the more open game, their idea was basically to try and release the front three into open spaces, running in behind or even carrying the ball into the final third. And okay, like that kind of worked. I think we saw some bright moments from Ilanga once or twice. Gordon, I mean, he did get the ball in a few like dangerous-ish areas, but obviously him as striker, like we don't expect it to work. It's not the long-term idea, of course. And I think we saw why, right? I think he had what 6 or 7 shots. Yes, he had 7 shots. 4 of them were blocked, and if you look at his shot map, they're kind of all from like towards the left, just outside the box. He had that one header close to goal, but apart from that, it's all from there. So it's like not really high quality chances. He's just kind of getting a look, cutting inside, but getting blocked so much. He's not a real presence in the box, and so that does limit the attack. I mean, I think kind of to draw a comparison here with United as well. I felt similar from their attack, where guys like, obviously we know Cunha and Bumo like to get shots off, so they got off a lot of shots from like range, but they lacked a box presence without a striker, and that kind of limited their attacking threat. I think they United got like 22 shots, obviously a very different kind of game, but like none of them were big chances, and 8 of them were blocked, and the average was like 0.07 xg per shot. So it was like low quality chances. I think that's one of the main things you miss without a recognized striker, and that's what we saw as well with Newcastle against the low block. So yeah, that second half was quite a watch.
Yeah, as Patrick and I had done sort of the Newcastle episode, and we had done a lot of talking about the team and prep for it, kind of in the way that you guys did with the newsletters. I was really looking forward to it because I was like, I feel like I really know a lot about this Newcastle team. This is an Aston Villa team that has done not a whole lot in the summer window. They're maybe starting now to try to get a few more guys out the door. It looks like Leon Bailey, in particular, might be leaving. But yeah, these were teams where I'm like, I kind of know, I feel like I know what to expect here. And especially with the game state changing, Villa getting deeper, red card, that kind of thing, it really gave Newcastle the opportunity to, to get after me and get after what Patrick and I were saying, that look, if they can build out of the back, whenever they win the ball, they'll look to go direct, but they have their biggest weakness is against teams that will sit in against them. And they're going to have either better passing or better combination play to break those teams down. That, playing it wide, having Harvey Barnes get forward and then cut back onto his right foot and just try to put balls into the box. Even if it wasn't Gordon, even if they did have Isak in there, I don't think that's the threatening situation that they really need to create consistently. And so that's going to continue to be the question. This game ending 0-0 because of that sort of inability to do that, I think, highlights why we talk about those sort of trends from preseason being our main questions moving forward. And I think that's what it continues to be. Newcastle, outside of that, I think showed all the things that they look really good in. I think we're pretty positive on that sort of starting 11 group, what they have to offer. Just again, maybe another dimension needed in midfield. We'll see. It looks like they're going to be one of the teams that continues to push things down to the wire in terms of trying to get a player in. I don't know where midfield exactly stacks up now. Like Ramsey coming in as a guy that has played kind of, especially the last sort of season or two, mostly as a wide player for Villa. Again, so has John McGinn, and what position is John McGinn is a little bit also flexible. Like player roles on these top teams are much more dynamic than just a single position. But Ramsey is a player that looks like he does a lot of what the team already has and fits what Eddie Howe wants, but doesn't necessarily add like a brand new dimension in their sort of line breaking, playmaking, sort of top passing ability, where sometimes it feels like the guy most likely to do that is Bruno, but Bruno really is best at helping them get out of the back, and he's not necessarily that sort of playmaker in the attacking areas once they get on top of a team or a team sits in against them. So I think that's sort of where things go from here. I think one last bit to touch on before we wrap up is we've got one actually last game. So the Premier League opening round fixtures for this season have been spread out over 4 days. So we haven't seen two teams yet. And I think sort of I'll wanted to kind of leave people here with your thoughts on the last game, which is Everton versus Leeds. What kind of things should they be looking for? As we've talked about early season watching and picking out little pieces, what are some of the things that you're going to be watching that game for later today?
Yeah, I mean it's already a big game for the relegation kind of group, right? Obviously, we think Everton have it in them to go a bit higher, but for Leeds especially, first game from the championship. So yeah, like first thing I want to see is just how Leeds shape up, because we know they were like super attacking in the championship, but now it's whole adjustment they have to make. Obviously, we talk about this with promoted teams all the time. So it's going to be so interesting here, right? Because they're not coming in and playing someone like a Manchester City where we know they just have to drop back. Like, how are they going to face a team who are kind of similar to them in the way they want to approach games as well, and in the quality as well? Maybe not exactly similar, but close enough. So it'll be very interesting to see like how expansive they are, how much they want to keep the possession, how like fast they're attacking, or how patient they are. And of course, with Everton, we know it. I mean, we know what to expect with them. David Moyes is still the coach, and we kind of have a pretty clear idea of the way he sets up his side. But they do have some new signings, and so again, against this kind of a team, how do they shape up? Do they want to try and keep more of the ball, or are they just happy to kind of sit back and hit them on the counter, where we know they can do damage with like the likes of Ndiaye? I don't know if I mean, probably won't expect Grealish already, but maybe we get like a late cameo, not sure. But yeah, to start, I think it's yeah, I'm more kind of interested in Leeds and just seeing how they are gonna prepare to shape up in the Premier League, because yeah, the relegation battle looks exciting this season.
Yeah, I think for Leeds, it's like, where are you guys going to press this Everton team? Um, the flip side of it is Everton came into last year under Dyche, and they sort of came out a bit more expansive and got burned in the first couple of the games of last Premier League season, conceding a
Yeah,
lot more goals than we expected. That being said, I think there's probably a lot of fans for Everton, especially with their new stadium being ready to go, coming into this sort of fresh group of signings, new ownership group. I think people are kind of wanting to see this team come out and be aggressive, especially against a newly promoted team. So I'm hoping for a bit of an open game. I'm curious to see where Leeds end up kind of pressing. This is a team that pressed really high and really aggressively in the championship last season. Had a lot of these sort of small attacking midfielder winger guys with a lot of speed that when they would turn the ball over would press aggressively and try to get it back. I don't know if that will be the tactic here if they try to do the same. Obviously, we've talked about Premier League teams, the sort of mid-block trend being really popular, and maybe being a way that these newly promoted teams can sort of square up, something that I think we might expect to see more from maybe Sunderland as the season goes on. But Leeds, I think it's an open question. We're not sure. They've had some turnover. Not being able to keep a guy like Manor Solomon, I think, is maybe one of the things that makes us a bit more nervous about their survival hopes. But where Leeds defends is a big question. Now, can Everton attack? They've got new pieces in. We're all looking forward to seeing Tiernan O'Berry's first headers in the box, I think, and whether those find the back of the net. And yeah, how does this Everton attack function? How are they going to put this together and look to attack teams this year? Because I think there's optimism in that area, but we're gonna want to see it. So those are sort of the lines that I'm looking for today. Neel, this has been a real pleasure for me. It's been nice to actually get to talk to you instead of just messaging or something like that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed both the starting fixtures of this season, but good to chat with you finally. Yeah, where can people find you and your takes as kind of continue to watch all these starting games of the season?
yep. You can head over to @ShailithNeil on Blue Sky or Twitter, and yeah, you'll see more of my takes. And of course, yeah, absolute pleasure to join you as well, Hayden. And hopefully things line up for us at some point in the near future as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. All right, everyone. Thank you and have a good one.